Morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, April 6th. It's a little quarter after 10. Um, we I thought we would talk about the bills that we have in committee and start making plans to getting some of those, done and kicked out. Um, we have a witness coming at 11. Diane Bosfelt's going to come in, and the finance director for the ag agency are going to come in and present their budget and that go through that with us. So do you guys have any preference on like putting we have two current use bills, maybe putting them together if at all possible and moving those, we'll have to see if there's any witnesses out there, if anybody wants to testify, and have Michael with us. No, we don't really. We'll have Abby Shepherd with us to go through the legal part of that. But I believe the tax department proposed both of those changes in there, so we'll have them in tomorrow. We haven't talked a lot, but we've heard quite a bit on the raw milk bill. And there's some more witnesses that want to come in and talk to us in regards to that. We've got the innovation change, the board. There's some more people that want to come in and testify on that. Plus, there's a gentleman from East Montpelier, I think he's from, that's been in before that he wants to have a little time before the committee. The guy that used to work, I believe he worked for the Agency of Ag. And he'd like to come in and present his thoughts about the whole issue. And so we'll probably have him in later in the week or so we can hear from him anyways in regards to what his thoughts are. Maybe next week, we can mark that bill up and get it out. The other thing that we need to chat about is I noticed the fairs. Jackie Folsom has sent out a request or sent a request to appropriations about getting some of the federal money to help the fairs this year. And we haven't talked in approps at all about whether, we were gonna hand any of that money out like we did last year. Of course, the rules and the regs aren't going to be done on that until the end of the month, they claim, late April. And if we're going home the second week in May, I don't know. I mean, we're going to have to talk about that in caucus or something to figure out if we're just going to sit on that, let the governor deal with it. If we're going to come back later in the summer, but if they're expecting to pump some of that money out, we should be thinking about if we need some of that for, for the farms or how we're gonna do it at least. Have any of you heard anything about that money?
Not
No,
really, no.
Just, I gather the governor's coming out with a proposal today. So, in some broad strokes. So I'm assuming, yeah, and the House started putting some fences around it in the budget, right, Mr. Chair?
a little, yeah.
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 So I'm assuming, what I understand, I don't have a clue about the timeline, but I understand that, committees of jurisdiction are expected to help. I'm hoping you and Approps will create some parameters that we would then work within, but I don't know more than that.
No, and
The plan is coming out today. I don't know how much, it'll be good. I think there'll be a lot of discussion about it. It's about as much as I'm probably comfortable willing to share.
yeah, you don't dare to share any. It's so bad you don't even dare to share it with us.
No, I think it's great, but I let the
Oh.
governor sell it before I have to. I think there'll be opportunity for us, though. I mean, I don't think it's going to be anything surprising. I think we know money wants, how money. Think of like what the towns have been told on how they can spend their money, broadband, water, stormwater is going to be part of it. So
Yeah,
I can think that's where we potentially could help the fairs with this 3-acre permitting stuff, and maybe help them with relief there.
well, and I got a request from, if we get onto the 3-acre rule, the small sawmills would, they've got a lot of big roofs on their lumber places and things, and they've asked about looking at the problems they're facing with the 3-acre rule as well. And of course our universal meals bills down in education, and I hope that Brian's gonna be kicking that out, this week.
It's on their agenda today, Bobby.
Yeah, he said that he was gonna get onto it, and I don't know where he's gonna go with it, whether he's gonna try to incorporate Jane's proposal into it or run with the regular universal meals program. But it's too bad we ran into the superintendents, and that crew ran us into the wall with their complaints, because to really maximize the benefits for everybody, you should do the universal meals program. And I mean, Jane's thing, there's 16,000 more kids, but a lot of those kids are already on. We never did get it separated out from, from how many of those children are already mixed up and getting the free meals. There should, I mean, I haven't got a clue what, but it's a $10 million, roughly, it was projected to cost 10 million with doing the Dr. Dinosaur proposal. Well, hell's all we were looking for is 5 a year for, of course, 5 years, but so we've got that deal too that we need to stay well abreast of. any of you heard anything about the child care bill?
No,
You talk about, some money. There's some big holes there that would take a lot of, I think more than universal meals program. If we bump that up to, they want to have salaries up around for early child care teacher provider up to 50 grand. They want to have a college repayment part in that bill. There's families up way up in up high in the standings, up over 100,000 you could earn and still get help with childcare if you had enough children. I know it's very much needed, but I don't know where the heck all that money's going to come from in 3 or 4 years. I mean, our economy, we better get it primed to go good with this federal money, or we're going to have a lot of empty pockets and when that runs out.
It's so tricky because these workforce issues are very real, but they are sort of across the board, and
yeah,
we get some opportunity to focus on one or two at a time, and it's frustrating.
I didn't know if we could move some of the teachers that we have, where we have too many in our public schools, move them, give them some money to go back to school to get a refresher in early childhood education and blend them into the lower age children.
Well, I think you've got to stop looking at childcare, pre-K 12 and higher ed as 3 different silos. I think once we look at as one system, we can find efficiencies in that system. And we're spending over $2 billion across that system. Can we develop a better system with $2 billion? I don't know if we can, but we just haven't been willing to have that conversation.
No, our numbers keep going down. If you added all those numbers of the together, I doubt if you'd get to the 120,000 that we used to run through the public school system, K through 12.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the argument I've always made. I was in middle school at that peak, at that 105,000 peak. That was, people like me, my kids will be going with 70,000 kids.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, our colleges aren't running the numbers there that we used to have. And like the state colleges, I'm even wondering if you should do a preschool through 16, is it? We talked about that years back. I'm sure, Chris, you've been around since we talked about a K-16 plan. And, that would, you might want to stretch your numbers to 16, Corey.
Well, that's what I mean, but and the other thing too, by looking at it as one system, you can change the calculus, because I joke with my wife all the time. We don't live close enough to when we're not in Chittenden County, but we'd actually save money, when my son goes to kindergarten, if we were to send him to a private school, it'd be cheaper than daycare. You can go to the private schools in Chittenden County for like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year. I pay $12,000 a year for childcare now. about $1,000 a month, a little 265 a week. So more than 12,000
Oh, for one?
for one. But it includes meals, and it's a
It's year round.
and it's year round, and it's a staff. So we had a cheaper option before, but if the lady got sick, my wife or I had to stay home, or there was times when I was on Chris Spray's committee that I'd be like, I'll be in at noon because I got to take the morning with the kid when my wife is going to take the afternoon, so I don't miss a full day. Now there's enough staff that he goes every day, unless last week he was out because there was a COVID incident.
Well,
but that's different.
Do legislators get subsidized for free childcare?
No, I pay all of it.
Yeah, we were paying at our peak when we had two in there, $1,300 a month. I mean, it was
Yeah.
wicked.
Well,
It's like a mortgage. It's like a holding mortgage.
if we
Oh,
if we have another child and put them in the same facility under two, they're $300 a week. So we would go to $565 a week at that facility. I mean,
That's crazy.
you got to make about
and-
$900. You got to make $900 a week, after taxes to pay that piece.
And in our daycare, childcare center, that one of our favorite teachers left because she could make more money bussing tables.
Is
And
that
that's just the sick reality of it. And it is, so the workforce issues are very real, and the pay is, it's a squeeze on the parents, it's a squeeze on the workers.
Well, what I find interesting, and my sister-in-law is a middle school teacher, and she's younger, just getting, just starting out in her career, but looking for something to do in the summer. And she's been reaching out she has a degree in early childhood, and she's been reaching out to centers to even just fill in for the summer while people are on vacation, is willing to make less, obviously, than she does teaching, but to provide some income in the summer. So I wonder if there's even like a program to incentivize that. I know it wouldn't be like year round, but, as kids kind of float out of, school, but are still too young to really be home alone, or their school teachers that are looking to pay off their college debt and other things, like a program to pay them, to help out in the summers.
So this
You
is something
guys-
I've wondered about for a long time. And I don't have a kid in the school system anymore, so I don't have a dog in the fight. If it's so expensive to send kids to daycare, and the people that work there make like minimum wage or less, where in the heck does all the money go?
What I'm
Well,
hearing from, my center actually has 4 locations. They have 2 in Chittenden County. They just opened up down there as well. They have, with that many, they actually have a couple staff people who just keep up with state regulations, like their full-time job. So, they're paying somebody, let's call it $50,000 split among 4 centers. They're paying $1,000 a month for someone just to manage regulation needs with the state, and other pieces. And, there's, you have those costs as well.
It always seems to me
and
the
they-
people that were running the show were keeping all the money. If they didn't give their employees a very good pay, I just don't understand where the money goes.
Well, don't forget that it's tiny ratios, right? When you're under 2 or something, you can only have
like 4 kids.
Right. So,
yeah. And
so
when
me
you're
and
really
my-
young, when they're still in, you can have 2. And I remember being stunned to learn that we were paying full freight at our childcare center, but it wasn't covering costs for our kids. Like, they were fundraising and dealing with philanthropy. And in our case, my spouse is a teacher. And so when we were shifting to kindergarten, for example, we took them out in July and August. And that was a total blow. They couldn't fill that slot for a month and a half, but we were like, look, if as soon as I can stop paying $1,300 a month, I've got to do that.
Yeah.
And, so little things like that, like they just eat that. And
but you're right. So like my kid, they're allowed 5 kids per 1 adult. And so if you do it at the 265 a week, if they're all, that's the rate, that's $1,300 they're pulling in per employee a week. I think they pay a little more than minimum wage, but I'm sure they're only in that $13, $14, $15, but you do, let's call it 15 with benefits, adding up to at hours, that's 600 of that's gone just to the staff. Then you have to pay the person who's managing regulation. If there's one kid missing, like Chris said, if there's an opening in the classroom, you have to account for that. Then you have to pay your rent and your other bills. There's probably not that much per kid
Insurance,
left over.
Food. You got a food director of
Yeah.
some kind. You know, just
The other thing that people are forgetting, that you don't ever hear we talk about it. You send a kid to the kindergarten or first grade, we are paying about $20,000, $21,000 a year, average throughout the system. So if you guys are only paying 10 or 12, there's $8,000 difference between what a first grader or school gets subsidized for the first grader than the preschool does when they call Chris or Corey to get how much it's going to be. And I know when Eric's children got old enough to, where they had to have Carlene started, his wife, he was complaining about what it was going to cost. And I said, well, screw that. We'll have Carlene stay home and look after her own children. And we'll just take her salary that she was getting working out, and we'll add it to your salary through the company. And so she got to stay home and raise her own children. And, they did as well as going to the daycare places. And Eric, I kept him home as long as I could. I mean, he was 7 years old when he started first grade. He'd go down to the farm, and I'm sure he learned, taking care of animals and being around the equipment. And I mean, he learned very well. And
Well, that's how I think I became a politician. My dad delivered Little Debbie snack cakes everywhere from St. Albans to Milton to Richford, my whole childhood. And so once I got school age on breaks, I just get thrown in the truck with Dad, and I'd hit every Quick Stop every week. So I just started talking to all the coffee crowds at 5, 6, 7 years old, and they all watched me grow up.
so you were campaigning way back then. Yeah, that's cheating.
I wasn't at the time, but I was out listening, and I used to have to read the newspaper, so I had something to talk to the guys about in the store. So that's how I got into reading the issues. And yeah, I always joke that's how it started, whether it was Weatherby's there in Richford or Uncle Floyd's in Enosburg, all those places.
handing out little
Yeah.
Debbie's as a 7-year-old.
Well,
Counting
my
on
dad
both.
he just retired from the Little Debbie thing in December, but his delivery truck, I stickered it up with my campaign signs. When he was making deliveries, everyone, even when after I got elected, they'd talk to him about issues, and he'd call me with reports from the stores.
But our children, if you look at the stats, our children aren't doing that well as far as education. I don't know if we've talked about it, but down in the other room, we have, half of our third graders are not proficient in reading. Well, golly, some of those little tots have been going to daycare and school since they were babies, and they still can't. I mean, I don't know what goes on, but we need to change the system. That's for sure. Hey, is there anything else that we needed to just talk in general about? I almost brought it up when we were on the floor about our caucus at noon today. Did you Republicans get invited to that, or have you had that presentation on the pension plan and all that?
Who's giving the presentation, Bobby?
Guy from joint fiscal, I believe.
Well, we had
No,
we had three things at noon, but it wasn't a Republican thing or a caucus. It was anybody could go to it kind of thing. I thought that guy was really good. I don't know if he was from Joint Fiscal. He was really young, but he
Yeah,
explained.
it's the same guy.
It is.
It's the same
Okay.
guy, yeah.
Oh,
So yeah,
you-
I've already seen it.
Oh, so you've covered it then?
Yeah, yeah.
Because last week when we talked about having him come, I thought we talked about having it for all of us, because we're all in that mess too together. Did you see though, finally this week, they came out with a lot of the problem was the poor returns on their investments. Oh, I'm telling you, every year when the treasurer comes over to appropriations, we talk about that. And I'm the one that, of course, brings it up. And
I want to know how she manages it, because honestly, the last 10 years, you should have been getting 7-8% returns if you literally
7 or 8, if you
I
have
know, but she
$10
didn't.
million, hell, you should be able to get real money for that kind of money.
Well, I remember a couple of years ago when I first got elected to the Senate, the governor called us in to talk about some concerns about pensions, and we brought it up a little bit, but the majority didn't quite want to talk about it yet. But at the time, it was like 2017. The prior year, the stock market did 21%, and we didn't even hit our 7% return. You're sitting there going, "How are we underperforming that much?" And I think people overthink investing, especially with large funds like that. You just need to hit market performance and, maybe a little more conservative with like a 70-30 split. But, I'm on the finance committee at our hospital with we have a small endowment, nothing huge, but the last people, similar situation, they overcomplicate the investing strategy. And you make it too complicated, and I'm sure they're paying outrageous fees. I don't know what we're paying for fees, but I bet that there should be analysis there. We shouldn't pay more than 0.5% in fees across the whole thing. Especially that's high even for that size portfolio. But and then you look at liquidity issues. Like, I'm sure we have offshore investments. They don't really make sense for a pension fund.
Well,
Mark the date, Mr. Chair. This is twice now. I'm completely agreeing with Senator Parent.
well,
Well,
I mean, hell, if you can add and subtract just a little bit, I mean, you haven't even got to be a rocket scientist, and you can scratch your head and say, where's the money? Where's they're getting 2-3%. I mean, somebody steals all the money.
I don't talk about it much, but I interned and had my first job out of college at Goldman Sachs in New York City. I was on the municipal bond team. But during my internships, I was on the rates desk and others. So we worked with these pension funds, CalPERS, Ontario Teacher Pensions. Like, we worked with them, but they weren't paying anywhere. I mean, they were big enough to have their own staff do their trading and stuff, but I bet their fees, considering their size portfolios, but it almost is the KISS, keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean? And keep investments there and the fees low, because that's where a lot of people lose, is they pay high fees and they lose that return. Because if you're paying a point or two, even if you're hitting the market, you're not exceeding the market because of the fee structure. So it's frustrating to watch my side.
I keep bringing up in a process, not keep, but every now and then I'll say to Jane, we ought to be looking at how much, we got 1.2 billion from the feds. Well, that money didn't get all spent in one day. So I brought it up to Jane several times. Maybe it's not many, but several times. Well, how much interest did we make off from that 1.2 billion while we were hanging on to it to go to ag or to go here or to go there? Well, I don't really know, but I bet I bet it was a lot. Well, that doesn't cut it for me. I want to know, do we make $1,000, $100,000, or no bucks? But you can't get answers. And when the treasurer come in, I asked her the same question. And I don't know if you've ever had conversations with the treasurer, but she doesn't even slow down to take in air. I mean, it's constant words and
The filibuster.
you never get the answer.
It's a filibuster. And you know who made the money is TD Bank, right?
Well, somebody made tons of money because with that kind of dollars, you can get some good returns.
Well, that's, I mean, with that kind of money, we should, I mean, realistically, like a 70-30 split where we're in some kind of, honestly, a market, hitting, it's me and my retirement that isn't pension related because I get one through my current job, but my old 401k, I look for the lowest fees and the one that tracks the market the most. Like, I'm not trying to outsmart the market. That was, in finance, even at Goldman, where a lot of people thought they were smart, the whole goal was over time to meet the market. No one consistently can beat the market year over year for 20 years. It's law of averages. It's like baseball. You all refer to the mean. It is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, you look at diversity and you have your ups and downs, but
I think I'm hopeful that now we've got a little bit of time, it seems like, that we can get this kind of analysis and not just be dependent on the treasurer. And I mean, I sent an op-ed around that was written by a guy who helps a bunch of union investors. And it's to your point, Corey, if we had invested in indexes, we'd have $1.5 billion more over the last decade. I mean, it's real money. It's like that closes the gap. That doesn't eliminate the problem, but it shrinks the problem by half.
Well, it's compound interest. It's what I explained we don't teach it enough in schools, the power of early. So the old saying is, and people don't realize this, if you could save $100,000 in your retirement from age 22 to 30 and stop putting money away, and then you put the same amount of money over the rest of your career, you retire at 60 with the same amount of money. The early years are so important because of that compounding. It's similar with this. You just can't catch up with it once it's gone.
Of course, I always plan. I never planned to work for anybody else. I always figured that I was a good enough worker, and smart enough so I could fend for myself and pay my own way. And so, talk about retirement, I had to figure out my own system. And playing with money has always been kind of a good game to play if you use your head a little bit. Hey, do you guys want to take a quick break before Diane starts?
Sure.
Yeah. So why don't we hop off and I'd like to call the meeting back to order, and our next proposal is having Diane Bosfeld and Amy Mercer from the Agency of Ag are going to be presenting the agricultural budget for this 22 year to the committee, and so we'll turn it over to, why don't we introduce ourselves, because Marcy, Amy, you may not know everybody, and so I'm Bobby Starr, and I try to chair the committee. And Chris, are you on?
Yep, Chris Pearson from Chittenden County.
That's good, Anthony, but you are muted.
Hi, I'm still Anthony Polina from Washington County.
Ryan Collmore from Rutland.
Corey Parent from Franklin County.
So want to certainly welcome you, Diane and Amy, to the committee, and Linda Lehman is with us, and she tries to keep us as straight as she can. But it'd be good to hear your presentation and the highlights of high points you could report to us. Maybe, do you have much on the COVID work that you folks did and present that so we can see the fruits of our labor on that deal? So with that, well, welcome, Diane, and you can introduce Amy and we'll listen.
All right. Thank you, Senator Starr. Diane Bothfeld, Director of Administrative Services for the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. And with me today, I have Amy Mercier. Amy, if you'd introduce yourself, please. And you're muted.
Hi, I'm Amy Mercier, Financial Director.
Welcome.
So thank you both. Thank you all for the time this morning to talk about our budget. Feels late in the year, but I suppose we're just, the Senate's really digging in now on the overall state budget. So we still have plenty of time. I'm going to share my screen. I did send this presentation to you all through Linda yesterday, so you may have it as well, but we'll really concentrate on the first few pages of that and then probably the last page to cover the main pieces here. So I'm going to do the screen sharing. And letting me know if you can see it or not.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
coming through well.
All right. So our Agency of Agriculture, we have a mission and vision statement, but our mission is to facilitate, support, and encourage the growth and viability of agriculture while protecting the working landscape, human health, animal health, plant health, consumers, and the environment. So our FY22 summary and highlights, an increase in general funds, 480,000 over FY21. We used those CARES Act money. So this looks like a big increase for us, but we took in CARES Act and utilized that in lieu of general funds, but now those CARES Act dollars are going out. So it looks like we're having a big increase in general funds, but it really is not a grand increase. For the agency as a whole, 6 exempt positions, 134 classified positions. We managed, as you know, and thank you for your support on this, 5 COVID relief grants in FY21, reaching 1,136 businesses, and invested just over $25.5 million. We supported ag fairs and field days, farmers markets, farm to school, ag and working lands, dairy producers, and dairy processors. And we do have a slide on that at the end that will give you some more detail. We're also very pleased to let you know that the agency has received the Dairy Innovation Center grant from USDA, and you may have heard from Laura Ginsberg, who is managing that grant. It is a tremendous honor to be a center. It's a Northeast center, so it's Vermont plus the New England states and New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. So it's quite a reach of states, but it is a very large grant, and great work is being done on that. And if you haven't heard from Laura Ginsberg, I can give you some information, but she is certainly the lead on that. The pie chart down in the bottom left corner shows the distribution of our funding. We're still pretty reliant on special funds, 48% of our budget, right around 15 million. General funds, the next largest portion, around 9 million. Federal funds, with this new grant coming in, a little higher, about 20%, 6.4 million. And then interdepartmental transfer, the funds that come in from other agencies and state government, they receive the funding and award it to us to do certain things. So that is the breakdown of our funding. We look at 6 different appropriations in the agency, our administration, and these also coincide to our divisions: administration, food safety and consumer protection, agricultural development, public health and ag resource management, Vermont Ag and Environmental Lab, and agricultural water quality. We really focus and have to focus on staffing and operations with this budget. We the largest expenditure for the agency is the people. So we have a very a diligent and dedicated staff, but then we sub-focus on ag development jobs, keeping businesses up and running, getting them inspected, getting them operating, and making sure we have a fair marketplace. Water quality, of course, has been a focus for many years now and still is a focus. And as you know, we regulate feed, seed, fertilizer, pesticides, the hemp industry, and a lot of weights and measures work as well. The Food Safety Consumer Protection, that Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA, for produce safety has been big for the agency. Animal health, the dairy and the weights and measures, and meat inspection. As you've heard throughout this legislative session, the meat industry has blossomed during the time of COVID and just keeps growing. So it's exciting times there. We know there's some bottlenecks. We know there's some challenges, but certainly some real interesting times. There are costs that we spread all across the agency. Those would be fee for space, all the different insurances, workers' comp, et cetera. Vision is the state's financial system. And these are spread out throughout the agency based on the number of positions. So we have more positions in food safety and consumer protection. They'd take a greater share than, say, administration, which has a fewer number of positions of those fees that come into the whole agency. If you look at our budget in comparison, FY22, our total budget will be $31,410,614. 29% general fund at just over 9 million, 48% special funds, just over 15 million, federal funds, 6.4 million, and interdepartmental transfers, just about 840,000. What's increased? Our net increase overall, 9.8% over FY21 at 2.8 million. General fund increase, 480,000, 5.6%. The special funds, 1.3 million, 9.2% increase, and our federal funds, 2.5 million. And that is truly about the Dairy Innovation Center, very large increase coming in there. And then the interdepartmental transfer, a slight increase of 2%. The areas of increase, 963,000 coming in from the statewide Clean Water Fund for grants out. Those grants go out to agricultural organizations like the Watershed Alliances, the Champlain Valley Farmers Coalition, et cetera, UVM Extension, and then direct grants to farmers to implement water quality changes. The annualization of Pay Act. This is something that it is what it is in state government. We don't get to choose those numbers. So that's 435,000. That will be an increase to the agency of annualized Pay Act. Internal service funds increase, 150, almost 152,000. The biggest increase there, the agricultural laboratory down in Randolph. Now that we have 2 full years of operation, the true cost of operations is becoming more clear. We did estimates up front. The first year we estimated a little high, the second year was a little lower, and now the true costs are coming in and we've seen an increase there. Our laboratory director reached out to the other laboratories that are new in the state, the health lab up in Colchester, the forensics lab down in Waterbury, and our mount per square foot is right in par with theirs. It's a smaller lab than the health lab, but a larger lab than the forensics. So we're right on target on a square footage basis. It just feels like an increase to us. So a little bit of a concern there, but right on target compared to other labs in the state. We've had a slight increase in workers' comp premium. And then that large dairy business innovation grant, 2.5 million coming in. And that grant did come with 2 positions that were approved through the Joint Fiscal Office. And you can see the number of the requests there, but 1 ag development specialist and 1 grants and contract administrator. These grants will be going out to farms and dairy processing businesses in Vermont, but also throughout New England, New York, and Pennsylvania. So those employees will help with that distribution of funds. Our area of decrease, the removal of the federal coronavirus relief funding. So we had 1.5 million of that funding to support the agency's work on the granting programs. Also the purchase of personal protective equipment and also offsetting the coronavirus leave that some employees had to take due to illness of their own or family member illness, quarantining, all those different things that impacted employees with the coronavirus last in FY21. Here's showing all of our different positions. The administration division has 13 positions, food safety consumer protection 38, agricultural development has grown to 21. Those are those 2 positions that are limited service and were approved by the Joint Fiscal Office. Public health, ag resource management, 23 employees, 14 employees for the laboratory, and water quality with 31 employees, for a grand total now of 140 employees for the Agency of Agriculture. This is our favorites. These are general fund grants that we keep track of very closely because they're very important to many constituents. And they have all been level funded for fiscal year 22. The fair stipend level funded at 110,000, farm to 2+2 farm scholarship program at 217,222, and we appreciate the additional general funds added to the base last year to increase that amount. That's very helpful. Farm to plate at 135,000, that's level funded. The Natural Resource Conservation Council, a level funded at 112,000. Farm to school level funded at 171,875. Local food grants 30,000, and the level funding of the general fund granting program for working lands at 594,000. We do appreciate the generous funding that was, it's in process in a separate bill of 3 million for the working lands, one-time funding. So we do appreciate that greatly. And I know that bill is working its way through and greatly appreciate it. And so that is the baseline funding for that granting program that's in the budget each year. So those are some major highlight areas and a big overview. Is there anything that you've heard of that you have questions about, or we can go into the division by division and dig deep if you want, or we can talk about a specific item that you want to know more about. Senator Starr, you're still muted. And Senator Starr, you're still muted.
There, now you can hear me. Early on, the 480,000 of CARES money that you got that you won't be getting maybe this year. Did you take all of that 480? Was that transferred out of the general fund, that, or was it just part of that? Or I know you had a whole group of people working on CARES funds, and I'm sure, I hope that was all paid for with the federal money. I'm wondering about what's going to happen with this money that we've got coming through this year. If Ag's going to get some of that to set up other programs with. We haven't dealt with that on our side really yet. Nobody's said, well, if Ag's going to be getting X dollars, and I don't know if you have any news on that or not.
No, not in any great detail. I know that the agency certainly is excited about the amount of funding that's coming to the state. There's certainly other work to be doing. The CARES Act funding that we received last year was tremendous for Vermont farmers. That it helped so many and was critical. I know there's more coming, and that there'll be more. It appears the governor is supposed to release the ideas that he has about this funding in the very near future. We do know that we did learn a lot from the CARES Act funding, and some of the things that we learned is, if we can take more time to put together applications. There was some confusion from, especially not so much farmers potentially as those who run agricultural business saying, well, do I go to ACCD for a business grant, or do I go to agriculture, or do I go? So trying to take some more time and put together either one application that can be used by everybody, so there isn't a confusion of which application should I go to, and the routing of the best opportunity happens within the application. If you answer these questions, it sends you this way or it sends you that way. So the potential to be able to do something like that, so there's less confusion for the applicant of where should I go, which one should I apply for, which one gives me the best deal. That was an area that just everybody was working so quickly and so hard to get funding out the door that at times applicants weren't sure where to go. I think the assistance we received from the CARES Act grants for funding our employees, pardon me, that were working on those grants, it was very important to us, and will be important in this next round. Because this was such a short term, the agency pulled people away from their other jobs to do the granting programs. We had a team of about, there were 32 different employees at the agency that were working on CARES Act in some capacity, 32, whether it was communicating out, doing webinars for applicants, doing the actual review of the applications, so it was all hands on deck. We pulled people away from doing their water quality work. We pulled people away from their inspection duties in animal health. So we pulled in people that now you will do this at least one day a week, if not two. And in some cases, people were doing it 5 days a week because of what they were asked to work on. So our division directors were like, well, this was all hands on deck, and we had to get this money out quickly, and we did it. But boy, things are opening back up, and I can't give you a water quality inspector this year. Last year things were more closed down. We did, we were more careful of what we did for inspections. So, okay, we could free up that person. But if everything else is wide open this summer, there's certainly concerns of saying, oh, you can have a water quality inspector one day a week or an animal health person. So we, if possible, maybe requesting the ability to hire some temporary people to help on this, to get the money out the door. We don't know what's coming. We don't know what the full proposals will be. We don't know what will be the agency's responsibility versus partners, other agencies and state government. So there's a lot to talk about still, but learning what we learned with the CARES Act money, how can we implement the majority of those concern areas, or how can we do it better? So certainly we don't have any details either yet, but certainly hope that because it's not such a rapid time frame, we can think things through a little more and take a little more time and potentially get the help on board that we need, not utilizing all agency employees depending on what our role is. So those are some certain areas we're thinking about, and certainly, hoping things can be done a little more slowly and differently this time.
Of course, you would still need your general fund appropriation to make your budget all work. But then if this all cuts loose and you get some more federal money where you can switch people over, you would switch it after July 1 in the 22 year. So that money would build up and kick back into the general fund area, and you'd get subsidized with that federal money. So that'll all work out.
Yes, that could work as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. Committee, I can't see you. I don't know if any of you have got questions in regards to the budget. Can you pull that down, your screen down, so we can see people, Diane? And then if we need to, we can pop a page back up. Yeah. We did do in the early bill that money for working lands, and we did do some money for slaughterhouses. Could you give us any kind of a report on the slaughter facilities and what they've been asking for to upgrade, and so we can get more animals put through the system?
The one we've heard from lately is employees. They had to slow down because of the lack of employees for processing. So that has been part of this bottleneck. It's not the slaughter, it is the ability to get them cut up into chops and cuts and hamburger. So the processing. So the potential to look at some kind of training, this isn't a 4-year degree. It's not even a 2-year degree, but even a certification program training people for the handling of the carcasses and cutting them up properly, et cetera. So we've had conversations with VTC about that. Funding for that would train people to be ready to come into these jobs. How do you provide an incentive for people to want these jobs? Some people don't like working with carcasses, and so that is a question area as well. But that seems to be the bottleneck area. We've heard about the ability to store that, the cold storage aspect, as well as the wastewater. So what do we do with, as a slaughter tries to grow, or even a processing facility, the wastewater gets to be a big question and a big investment. So it's not a plain old septic system, the grease traps, and it's beyond my knowledge, but they're expensive. I know that much. So those are some areas that, yes, wanting to expand and be able to have more throughput, it's employees, facilities changes, and also then wastewater. So those are some 3 major areas, but mainly on the processing. Throughput at the slaughter isn't bad, but the backup comes of moving them out of the slaughter facilities cold storage off to, if it's separate, off to a processing facility. And so those are the areas we've been hearing concerns about, and areas. And the waste storage is also an issue for dairy processors. When they start off milking an animal on their farm and making cheese or yogurt or something right on the farm at a small scale, there's a way to utilize existing waste storage on the farm, but as they start to grow, then they lose that. So that aspect as well, the waste storage for dairy as processing as it grows as well. Some of it is remediation of existing facilities, and some would be, as they choose to grow, then they need to install something new and different that is very expensive for these facilities. So there's some pinch points as well, and the dairy processing on waste management also. So when they get to a certain size, they leave the confines of the Agency of Agriculture and start working with DEC. And DEC did a outreach to the dairy processors 2 years ago. Visited we were aware, we helped open doors for DEC to talk with dairy processors of what they currently had for waste storage and what was possible, what they wanted to do in the future. So the inventory of what's out there and where potentially to go exists. And so that may be another area of, we talk about waste storage, waste management for dairy processing and meat slaughter and processing. Those are some areas that probably need some investment to help businesses succeed and grow.
Yeah. Brian,
Thank
Senator
you.
Collmore.
Yep, thank you. Diane, how many slaughtering facilities are operating right now in Vermont? You know?
Somewhere between 7 and 10. I can get the exact number, but it's not a huge
that's
number of slaughter. Processing is a greater number, but still the bottleneck is in processing.
Thank you.
Um,
You don't need to get any more specific than that. That's fine.
the ecosystems, we put some money in for Ryan with the ecosystems program so that he could get started. Do you know, or have you followed up to see how how's that program going in general, just ballpark area?
Yep. They've had some really good discussions. They ceased meeting because of the COVID and also the funding, and the organization, the group requested the funding. So very appreciative of getting that funding. There is a contract with the facilitator, which also lapsed while, COVID was going on. So I believe they've met once in calendar year 2021 already, and are re-upping that contract with the facilitator to really dig in and start their work in earnest throughout this calendar year.
Yeah, so we probably Ryan will be back next winter with some kind of update and report of how they're moving ahead with that.
Yeah.
Other questions from committee members? One other issue that it isn't really an issue, but I heard about it and wanted to ask you about it. It seems like in a particular pesticide maybe fund, there's quite a lot of money sitting in that. And is that earmarked for certain projects or things, or have you heard anything in regards to that?
So all
Not
of
that
our,
I want to talk about it a lot, but we need to, I guess we should know, what that's to be used for. So if it ever comes from higher up, we can fend off the dogs from wanting to get all the meat.
yeah, so we have special funds the agency collects, which are fee-based, as in license or registration type fees. We have about 53 of those different fee-based in our agency. Some are very specific, as in in water quality. There was an increase in the pesticide registration, and a portion of that goes to fund water quality work. So very specific of where those funds can be used. Other funds are much more broadly used, as in they talk about the ability to use these funds within the title. So within Title VI. So other things that we do within agriculture, funds could be used in that manner. So the funding you're speaking of, pesticide registration and monitoring, is one of our larger funds. The pesticide registrations were increased during the water quality time. Our fee bill cycle is 2013, we had a large fee bill year. 2016, we adjusted some other fees. We have not adjusted fees since the agency has not requested fee changes since that time. The fees for hemp were added, and the definitions around fees in feed, seed, fertilizer, and animal products are part of the compost bill this year. They exist already, just adding other information of who is required to pay those fees. So there hasn't been a lot of changes, but when we do go in for a fee bill change, the request is to look at that fee and make sure it covers your expenses for the next 3 years of this process. So you expect to collect more than you expend in the first year. Second year should come out about equal, and the third year things get pretty tight. So we have been fortunate that we have collected more than required, but we are in a very interesting position this year. So we have to estimate what we think our revenue is going to be each year. And the COVID year, we're really concerned about what our revenues will be. So our process has been to say, all right, we have a complete fiscal year of all the fees we collected. In this case, for building the FY22 budget, we looked at FY20, what did we collect in revenue? And then we say, do we think it's going up, going down? Where we think this is going to be? That's the number we plug in for revenue for FY22. So we don't know what's going to come in this year. We've had some concerns certainly around business closures or shutdowns, and we're going to go out and hammer on a little convenience store for all their fees, and they're not even half open because of COVID. So all of FY21, as we continue toward the end of this fiscal year, we're not so sure we're going to meet all of our requirements for our fee collection, and will some of that spill into FY22? Hopefully not, as things continue to open up, but certainly some concern areas. So the fact that we have some balances remaining, it's a quote unquote savings account for the agency. We utilize that if we don't come in where we need to be for FY21, we tap into that money. If we need to make a purchase that is important to keep the agency going, but is a lot of money, we utilize those funds. The best example right now is the scale truck for the weights and measures. We were refused entry to utilize our old scale truck at the granite quarries and some of the larger businesses because it wasn't outfitted with the safety requirements of those businesses. They wouldn't let us do our work because we couldn't ensure the safety of our employees. So we just updated that truck. It's will be in operation. They're starting their outdoor work now in April. They don't do scale truck work in the winter because of ice, snow, etc. So now it's outfitted properly with safety equipment. It's a new truck. The old truck had been, I think it was used when we got it, and it was lots of miles on it, well over 150,000. So it was time for a new truck. We didn't have to come in and ask the corrections and institutions or Senate institutions to be able to please give us money to buy that truck. We had it. We had it in our cash balance. That's what we use those funds for. So if you were looking at your household budget, we're doing the right thing. We're managing our budget. We have a little bit of savings. We use that for purchases that we know are coming up. So in the pesticide funding, the main thing is protective equipment for our employees, the potential for the laboratory. Some of the analysis equipment there is $250,000, $300,000. You know, these gas spectrometers and all these liquid chromatography and all these different things. So those are the things that we use those funding for. So for FY21 and going into FY22, the uncertainty of our revenue, it's a fallback to be able to use some of those funds. Also, if we have any upcoming purchases, large purchases, we rely on those funds. But they have been going down. We have had to rely on those further due to the fact that we haven't had a fee bill year or haven't utilized or haven't put in for any fees for the agency requesting changes since 2016.
Yeah, and you brought up an interesting point earlier here in your discussion about small mom and pop places that aren't really fully open and had trouble paying because all the licenses now come together, I believe, on one form and one check. Do you know if you folks, do you have any way or authority so you can waive those fees if a place can't pay them, or do you know that?
The secretary, I believe, does have that authority. We try to be as consistent as we can of how we utilize that authority.
Yeah.
You know, we everything is on a cycle at the agency. Time of year, we try to spread out the licensing and registration requirements around the calendar instead of, everybody's got to do it January 1st. So they're spread out around the calendar. The retail license is the one you're speaking of. It is a one-page license that would include the gas pumps, the scanners, the scales, the dairy counter, the meat counter. So it is a one page, but it's a lot of different programs. That came up, Amy, I believe that is coming up in our cycle right now. In your mute.
Yes, retail's in process right now.
Okay, so it's this time of year. So a year ago, when COVID was crazy for everybody, things were shut down. We were a bit more lenient. We had a lot more accounts closed, so to speak, that didn't pay. And then when those things occur, we go back through with our program people to say, so this year we'll be looking again to say, Diane's mom and pop store closed last year, didn't make any payments. Look, I drove by and Diane's mom and pop store is open. So we would probably be following up on a program level saying, you're still in business. You still do need to you still need to license, please come back into compliance. But in last year, we were less aggressive on that. If payment didn't come in, we considered it closed, handed it off to the program people that would look into that and where are people at. So we did see a pretty large number of closures. Amy, what was that number from 2019? 200 and something?
I think so.
Yeah, 280 or something like that didn't come forward. So yeah, the impacts on our income are concerning in that area. We estimate it's between 300 to 350 per entity that would come in per license. They vary because of size and scale, but 200 of those at $300 each is a hit to our budget. So those cash balance, as you spoke of, Senator Starr, is our buffer to those kind of things, that we can utilize those if things aren't going well. We've overestimated our revenue and the impacts of COVID there. It also keeps us, for those of you who track the budget, we do not come into the Budget Adjustment Act very often and say, boy, did we really screw this up? We need more money. So we have managed it within our budget with our revenues, but also if we are able to put some aside, we've measured any issues in that manner.
Well, it's good for us to know what that's used for in case the discussion does come up, or Chris is in finance and I'm across the room with from him, and occasionally things come up, and it's good for us to know that, hey, this is a little cushion on a $31 million budget, and which if you look at the total figure, it's a pretty small percentage. There are other questions for Diane or Amy? Brian?
Thank you, Bobby. And I know this is more speculation than anything, but of course, none of our agricultural fairs operated last year. I don't know what the drop dead date is for each of them to try to decide whether to operate this year, but I'm hoping, and by the way, thank you for level funding them. I think that's really critical for their peace of mind. And I'm hoping that some of them, maybe the great majority of them, will be able to operate and take in some ticket sales and concessions and all that kind of stuff. Do you have any idea, Diane or Amy, where we are in that sort of world?
The granting programs have usually been the first part of the year we have combined the stipend plus the capital grants into one application for fairs, so they're not having to do two of those. And that's usually the first part of the year. I'd have to check in and see if we sent those out or not, just thinking of COVID and all those kind of things. The majority of the fairs, I think they all start after July 4th. And so the potential goal of the governor to be able to, reopen the state around July 4th should help those entities. But I know there's a lot of planning they have to do now. They can't wait until July 4th to start their planning to open. So I will ask that question, Senator. Beyond that, I don't have a great answer, but I can find out.
Yeah, one of the complications there, of course, and depending on how you view, what a fair should be, I have a kind of liking for the agricultural part, at least at the Rutland Fair, but they do have rides, okay, and that's where a lot of the income is. And so one of the complications there is a company will need to negotiate contract terms, probably like now,
Yeah.
for them to come up. And if only one of the fairs is going to operate, it'll put some incredible pressure on the prices, I assume. If we could get 9-10 of them working and they could stop at more than one on their way up to the north, as they say, that would probably be a good thing. So,
yes, I'll check into that, Senator. I know, yes, the timing is correct, but I haven't heard if those grants have gone out or what's happening. But yes, I'll check in.
Now, I don't know if you were on earlier, Brian, but I know Jackie has sent in a request for us in approach to just wonder whether we were going to be able to help them with any federal money or not. And, they have to make those contracts or put those contracts together with the ride people, heck, way back in the winter. And so I haven't heard, we didn't hear from them whether they made the contracts or not, but it would be nice if we could get them opened up, that's for sure.
So
there are other questions for Diane or Amy?
One of the other things you asked about, Senator Starr, was the CARES Act funding. So if I can share my screen again, I have a slide on that funding that tells you something about the fairs as well.
Yep.
There we go. So that's the breakdown of all the different funding sources that you provided to the agency to send out. Dairy farms and dairy processors were the largest of 793 awards for 18.3 million. Ag and Work and Lands, 302 awards, 6.7 million. The agricultural fairs, we allotted 500,000 to that, and all of it was utilized. Farm to School, all 100,000 there for 22 different farm to school entities. Farmers markets, 7 came forward for about $12,000. So grand total 1,136, 25,647,000. So that covered all the different grants that we sent out. So yeah, the farmers markets were the ones we didn't get a lot to come forward there, but all the other ones were very well, accessed, and we put a lot of money out the door. So very helpful. But
the farmer markets was that because they didn't apply, or do you know, Diane?
We pushed and prodded and poked them and encouraged and helped and still didn't get a lot of interest. The business structure was a question. Some didn't have any great structure, so we found a way around that on the tax side, because all of this required some kind of tax information, so we tried to find a way around that. Some being concerned that too much going on, can't take the time to apply for this, can't. So we nudged and pushed and prodded and just didn't get many to come forward.
Because they were asking about it, of course, and I know.
We requested assistance from those entities that were asking as well, to get the word out and try to help and encourage and nudge and help them fill out the form, whatever you could do to help, them come forward. But it was very limited on the farmers markets. Everything else was very well accessed, but that seemed to be the one that just didn't fly.
I know I got, because a lot of farm people know me, and I got a lot of calls saying how helpful you guys at the agency were in helping them, get their paperwork put together, and people calling them, and some, I guess, even went and sat down with them to help them put their numbers together. And
the agency staff helped a lot, but also the farm viability, the funding you sent there for their assistant, that was huge as well. They did a lot of work there, and a lot of outreach. It was concerning, the ability to sit down with folks. We're in the midst of COVID and all those concerns, but it was a way was found to do it, and people were very appreciative. To get that help. And yes, it was electronic, and some people were concerned about that, but those farm viability folks, could utilize their computer and utilize their, expertise and work with the farmer to get the data entered. And, so lack of a computer did not stop anybody if they chose. But yeah, it worked. We have some things we've learned. Abby Willard could provide you the feedback on the surveys we've done. We did surveys of the folks from farm viability that were service providers. How did it go? We sent it out to farmers to respond, and we did it internally with our review team of what did we do? How did we do it? Could we do it better? And the appreciation coming back from the farm and ag-related business community was great, of how much this helped keep them in business. But certainly things for us to work on and make better. I think being able to take a little more time with this next round of money, that it doesn't have to be spent as fast as possible by the end of the year kind of thing, having 3 years to do so. Hopefully we can utilize that feedback and set something up that, listens to what we heard as feedback and makes it as easy as we can for those who would be applying.
Yep. Any other questions for Amy? It looks like we're in pretty good shape, Diane.
Did you want me
well-
to comment on another bill on, I think Linda asked if I would comment on H421. Is that something you want or not? I'm fine not to if you don't have time.
Oh, the humane officer? Yeah, what is the deal with that bill? Is that something you're aware of?
We are aware of it. The organization that is mentioned in here, the task force, is something that our state veterinarian, Dr. Kristen Haas, has been serving on. It is called what are they called? The Animal Cruelty Investigation Advisory Board. Dr. Haas serves on that and is well aware of what they're proposing. The agency has a consulting role in animal cruelty investigations. We cannot enforce this. It's in the criminal code, Title 13. We do not have powers at all at the agency to enforce this. This bill defines further what an animal humane officer is, and also that the requirements for training. So in our role in consulting with humane officers or police or sheriffs, we help with livestock investigations of having the knowledge of livestock and proper conditions and proper treatment. But we're not the ones leading, it's the law enforcement. So we do see across the state that the knowledge, the ability is, just so diverse, and having something specific with specific training for humane officers could be extremely positive, and the agency supports this. Just having some better baseline knowledge. Yes, still needing to consult with the agency when livestock is involved, but at least there would be more consistency on what people know and understand going in. So we do support this bill.
Yeah, very good. Any other questions for Diane? Jackie, I see you come on the screen. Did you have a question, or are you just here to listen?
I'm always listening, Senator. You should know that. I heard you talking about our fairs, and to save Diane the time, I'd just like to let you all know, and thank you very much for your continued interest and support in them. We're very grateful to the agency for keeping our line item the same in their budget for the stipend, and all the money for this year, the stipends and the grants have gone out. So the agency was very good at, as Diane said, they combined the two grants so that the folks are only doing one form. And the stipends were sent out as were the grant monies. So they are ready to go on that. The first fair is indeed, it's Lamoille. So I think it's July 13th, or maybe that would be the first, not Lamoille, excuse me, Bradford, Connecticut Valley. The next one would be Lamoille. Those are the two closest that would happen first. And they are very, very concerned about not getting a go-ahead from the governor, although we recognize we've been watching the numbers too. And we're concerned about, yes, everybody may be vaccinated by, midsummer, but the increase in the COVID cases are a little worrisome. Our problem is, our challenge is, of course, the carnies and the amusement ride people. There are three of them that come into the state. One of them is Straits, which goes only to Champlain Valley Expo, and they come in on a train actually from New York. And then they go, but they're working now. There are some fairs down in Florida that are open, although I have not heard what the attendance has been. There is a group called Dreamland out of Massachusetts, and they are fully prepared to come in. They go to Franklin, Addison, and Caledonia County. There is one called American that goes to Rutland and also Orleans, which has changed its dates to after Labor Day this year. And then Gillette comes into Tunbridge. And Lamoille and Bradford have a little company that comes out of New Hampshire. They do not do a lot of rides. The challenge that I've been mentioning to the board and to the members is, are we sure that some of their employees come from Mexico? And we don't know what the vaccination issue is down there, or if they can get vaccinated in stateside. So I've really been pushing our members to find out a little bit more about that. All of the companies that are coming in as amusement rides do I've seen them all. They have their COVID background set up so that their employees know what to do, know how often they're supposed to clean. One of the reasons that, and thank you, Senator Starr, for mentioning the funding that we've asked for. The fairs are a little concerned that if they do get to open, will the attendance be as high? They're also going to be buying a lot more signage and sanitation PPE things for themselves and probably for the carny and amusement ride people. The other issue that they run into up in Caledonia is because of COVID and because of retirements, Mr. Lawrence usually contracted with I think it was the Caledonia County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah.
Security, and they have declined to provide security this year. So he's been looking around and trying to figure out what to do. This probably means it's going to be a problem for all the other fairs, although I haven't heard from any of them but Mr. Lawrence. But the best he's been able to come up with is a security company that's going to be costing him $64 an hour.
Yeah.
And we don't anticipate challenges on the fairgrounds, but sometimes you do have issues. And so all the fairs usually have some type of an agreement with the local police department or sheriff's offices or so on. And that's going to be tough this year. So they're looking at, even though they may be able to open, and we're certainly hoping that they will be able to open, especially the folks further down into August and September. They are anticipating lower crowds just because we don't know what's going to happen, whether the governor will say that they will have a capacity piece to adhere to on the grounds. Some of them are looking at extracurricular activities, as it were, other events, some of the things that they used to do. But again, we're waiting on seeing what the governor will do as far as opening us up and letting us figure out what the next step is. So the two fairs closest to the beginning of the season, they're pretty close to the drop dead date as far as should we have a fair or shouldn't we? And the rest of them are kind of waiting and seeing. So I didn't intend to take all your glory there, Ms. Bothfeld, and welcome back. But I was listening, and I just wanted to give you all an update on where they are. So that's where we are. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, appreciate that, Jackie. And tell Dick that he ought to check with Marcoux over in Lamoille County. He's got a full crew, and they're good guys, and they might be able to run over and help him at Lindenville.
I'll let him know. I think he looked into everybody in the kingdom, but I will certainly let him know, Senator Starr. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yep. Any other questions from the committee? If not, thank you, Diane, and thank you for hopping on, Jackie. I guess Amy's gone, but thank her too, Diane.
Oh, she's still watching, Senator Starr. She's watching real close. Don't worry.
Yeah, just moved around on the screen. So thanks a lot, and we'll if I get questions in the other committee, I'll get hold of you. So
thank you, and I'll get that information out to you by mail.
Yeah, appreciate it.